Good evening. Thank you for all for coming. Indeed, on my way here, I remembered Etel's reading, which was absolutely stupendous. She read in the time of war, being in the time of war. It was in the church, it's in another room than this. That's all I wanted to say. It was a memorable evening, as it is today. Bye.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. I made my introduction this afternoon, so sorry if you missed it. I'm not going to repeat all that. Because the symposium has started. We're just continuing. We're changing locations. We are always in motion, as Etel was. And here we are. I just wanted to reiterate some thanks to the whole poetry project team. We've been working together on this for several months, and it's been a joy. Giorno, Poetry Systems, Anthology Film Archives, and Bidoun, that hosted our screening at Anthology. I would also like to thank Galerie Le Long and White Cube and Sphere Semler Gallery, who all three galleries represent Etel and have been generous with us to make it possible to have this symposium. I would like to point out and thank Basir here, who works for Eat Offbeat, and that's the company that's curating tonight's dinner and tomorrow's dinner. And Eat Offbeat is a company that was started by two Lebanese people, a brother and a sister, who, when they moved to New York, couldn't find good hummus, essentially. So they had to do something about it. But what it developed into is a company that employs a certain number of chefs, all of whom are refugees. So they serve cuisines from different areas of the world. Think of them if you have an event to cater. Tonight, we had an amazing screening last night and an extraordinary afternoon of talks this afternoon. Tonight, we are going to hear some poetry and some music. So the event is going to be in, I'll tell you the parts. So we'll start with a presentation of the new book, Etel's newest book, that is just coming out now with Litmus Press, and Tracy Grinnell of Litmus Press will present it. Then Sarah Riggs will read, and then George Abraham will read, and then Amir Safar will present a musical performance that he has created especially for this evening. I won't say much about Litmus other than Tracy Grinnell, who is a poet, started it in 2001 from probably her kitchen and was publishing a magazine called Aufgabe and started with a book by Keith Waldrop. And it's developed into a beautiful press that not only publishes the books of Litmus Press, but also takes care of the catalogs of other presses. But I'll let her say that and present the new book as well.
Thank you, Omar. Thank you, Simone, for this really beautiful occasion and the project and Giorno Poetry Systems. I'm not going to say too much about Litmus, but I will say that I've been working with Simone for the past 8 years to tend to the expansiveness represented in her post-Apollo publications. So that's the other press books that are on the table over there that we're sort of, stewardship is the word that I think of. And yes, so to keep Etel's earlier works in print, to create new readerships and points of engagement. Most recently, to collaborate on new editions of Etel's and Simone's work, Voyage, War, Exile, which is just out and we have copies of over there. And also a really lovely forthcoming edition, Epic Visions and Elemental Objects, which is two essays. One essay by Simone on Etel's visual art, and an essay by Etel on Simone's ceramic sculpture. And the really, I don't know how many collaborative paintings you actually did, but one. And this is it. So it's really wonderful. The cover is a collaborative painting from 1973 that Simone and Etel did. So before I read I'm going to read a little bit from the essay Voyage, War, Exile. I did want to also acknowledge Patrice Cotenson, who I believe is here in the audience, I hope. But if not, so this sort of, this book emerged, Etel wrote these essays in English in the 80s and 90s, and they were published separately in journals in the US. And then Patrice Cotenson does this beautiful press, Les Chapes, and these really beautiful editions. And so he had translated those 3 essays into French and published them. And in one of our conversations, shortly after Etel passed, Simone immediately said, these 3 essays need to appear together, and so we decided to republish them in 1 volume. And that is this. Okay, I've got too many books up here. So Voyage, War, Exile, this is from 1994, Etel wrote it. I originated in a part of the world that war has made and unmade since the beginning of this century. My memory as well as my daily life are woven with war. I often wondered how as fragile a system as the human body could bear upheavals, become chronic, as the ones that the Arab East has known and is still experiencing. I was the only child of a family which has known war and exile as a consequence of war. My father was a Syrian, a high-ranking officer of the Ottoman Empire, and my mother was a Greek from Smyrna. Her father being a woodcarver, they met and married during World War I. In 1922, Smyrna burned in a cataclysmic fire. The war was lost, the empire dismembered. So they came to Lebanon and settled in Beirut, a garden city with a view from all over, on the sea they knew, and the most beautiful harbor of the Mediterranean. They exiled themselves into charm and beauty. Geographically, it was a bearable exile for my father, for after all, he was on Arab land and close to his birthplace, Damascus. But he was living another exile, a terrible one, this one. The empire that he knew and served had disappeared. He was living on enemy territory, a country under French occupation. I lived since my childhood with a knowledge which remained inscribed in me, that geographical exile is but the frame for an exile which goes much deeper and against which one can do nothing. As for my mother, she thought of Smyrna day and night, suffering from its absence, and often, I would say too often, I saw her questioning the horizon which encircles Beirut, and wondering where Smyrna would have been, behind which cloud, on which side of the north of the setting sun. Her education had been left to hazard and to the meanderings of her life, and she resided in the twilight zone where most people live, and in which they orient themselves according to their desires and sorrows. A little after I turned 20, I started considering going to Paris for studies in philosophy. Considering was a term which can hardly describe my state of mind. I was impatient, yearning to go, and I did get there. After Paris, I went to California by a series of occurrences which I am not going to linger on today. I landed in Berkeley, far, very far from every point of view, from Beirut, and from everything I knew. This break, which proved to be a radical one, was not an exile. It was an adventure. I had decided to give myself a destiny for which nothing had prepared me. I remember this as a period where I became intensely American and intensely an Arab, given the new perspective I acquired from the Bay Area on the Arab world. Most of all, I sensed an exhilarating belonging to the world per se. I was not living in exile. Pardon me. I was not, excuse me. I was not living in exile, but a freedom which I found on my own and at my own risks. It was fun. But we know that the earth contains under its crust formidable plates which move constantly and in contradictory directions, creating earthquakes. And like herself, I was creating within my soul opposite currents equally ominous. I was espousing the dreams of the Arabs, their dramatic dreams of freedom, dignity, and unity, all symbolized then by Gamal Abdel Nasser. And at the same time, and in another direction, I was plunging wholeheartedly into America, its history, its literature, falling in lasting love with the American Indians and with jazz music, aware and practically hypnotized by its frightful possibilities of mass destruction and by its incredible conquests of the moon and of space. I was living in a new time and space scale, in the absolute sense of the present, merging my own mythical time with America's own. Following the Apollo missions and its rockets, I was extraterritorial and tuned to the universe. But the foreseeable earthquake did manifest itself. War broke out in 1967 involving Egypt, Syria, and Jordan, and America did decisively participate in the destruction of the Arabs, of their dreams and their lands, and I experienced terror, a terror that my surroundings were not sharing, and I started losing ground, getting not confused, but wounded, isolated, detached, although still attached, a conflict which later made me ill for practically a whole year, from 1971 to 1972. I felt the urge to break away, go back to Beirut without looking behind me and not knowing what the future would be. I had come full circle. In the summer of '72, I was returning to Beirut, literally on a stretcher. I had left as a voyager, and I was coming back in exile. I was discovering, living exile's profound meaning. What is exile if not the violent and involuntary loss of all the living symbols of one's identity? At this point, instead of me leaving, it was Beirut which was leaving me, and we know it now, forever. Here was an exile which was total, absolute. I was in Beirut and I was witnessing that she was never going to grow normally, to remain the core of what she was. I was seeing, without any exaggeration, the meaning of Paradise Lost. I had seen over and over again with my own eyes and on television these faces, Palestinian faces, people forced to abandon their country and who are parked into camps or lived as foreigners on their own territory, denied the power to run their own affairs, which is to say, exiled from their own selfhood. And this is true today of the Muslim Bosnians as it is true of the Indians of the Americas, the United States included, where, among other indignities, they are forbidden to study in their own schools, their own languages and cultures, and practice their own religious rites. To be exiled on one's own homeland and from one's culture is maybe the most desperate of all forms of exile. It is living hell. Exile is a complex experience. Sometimes one falls in love with the country in which one has been forced to live. The human heart and mind are not monolithic. Quite often they follow unpredictable courses. Again, Mahmoud Darwish comes to one's memory. He passionately expressed his love for Beirut. The city had become his second home, his private legend, and again he had to leave, a second-time refugee. a tree twice uprooted, very likely unable to make new roots and condemned to longing and pain. People in this situation are denied ordinary happiness. They can find here and there exaltation in their work, but they will never have the casual taste for living that ordinary people can enjoy in continuity, in familiarity with their land. What am I to say? That our illusions concerning the Arab world have been destroyed? Yes. We dreamed of Arab unity, while today we have a hard time imagining that any one of those countries will hold together. We believed against all evidence that America somehow would become a positive factor, would help the world out of its degradation, but its policies have been rather a recipe for more chaos and devastation. I came to think, which is no consolation, that our predicament is not only our own. Amidst ecological disaster, economic predatory tactics, and political bankruptcy, a human being, wherever, appears to be a fallen angel, an angel exiled from the old paradise as well as from the future. Exile is not the sad privilege of only a few individuals. It has become synonymous with the human condition, but with slight difference that some of us are eaten by this illness in ways evident and definitive, while all the others are not yet conscious of what they already are suffering from. We are, as contemporaries of this day and age, all very, very close to each other, but very few are those who share with us that knowledge. Thank you. Thank you, Simone.
Thank you, Tracy. So that was from one of the 3 essays that are in the book. Sarah Riggs is the author, yes, Sarah Riggs, is the author of 8 books of poetry in English, including Pomegranate, Eavesdrop, The Nerve Epistle, and the forthcoming Lines. She has translated and co-translated 7 books of contemporary French poetry into English, including Etel Adnan's Time. And Sarah is also an artist and filmmaker and co-runs the international arts organization Tamas with her partner, me. Sarah wrote some poetry for this evening under the title Letters to Etel from Egypt. She will read those texts, and then I will join her for a reading of a part of Time.
So I first met Etel Adnan and Simone Fattal in the spring of 2003 in Paris when Omar and I were just starting to date. So this was one of our dates. We went to Simone's show of sculptures at the Cité des Arts. And we enjoyed many years of close proximity to Simone and Etel. I just want to add, I don't know if anyone else has mentioned this, Simone Fattal is an extraordinary sculptor and painter. And there was a show of hers at PS1 MoMA a few years ago. She's been at the Venice Biennale and many other places, and she has been an incredible supporter of Etel's work throughout Etel's life, editing post-Apollo press, and it's just really generous of her to help put this symposium together. In this month of February, I have traveled to Egypt for the first time, and I have written 3 poems called Voyage, War, and Exile, as Omar asked us to respond to this wonderful collection, very strong collection. And I have also written letters to Etel, not for the first time that I've been writing letters to Etel since her passing, and I've excerpted here and received the counsel of the young Egyptian poet Sarah El-Kamel. And I dedicate this reading to Pierre Joris, poet, translator, editor extraordinaire, who passed on Wednesday, who lived for a stretch of time in Algeria, and with Habib Tangour edited an anthology of North African poetry, among many other works that he edited. And it ends with a trilingual Arabic, English, French poem by Omar Berrada. Everything that I'm reading tonight are words in process, in progress. So feel free to share your feelings. Cairo, February 3rd, 2025. Exile. Your tongue ties around fingers of yarn. A crowd of exhaust edges the pyramids. Ravens know the ancient stones. The Sphinx carries the Nile's western bank. Some material question is in the air. Who to the stance of the elegant cane? Restless shades know to flare in the triangle. Sibilance of power would devour the sand. Lately, it is a pigeon who wings grace. There is no stone in the pocket, no stone in the mouth. Whispered rains lift over your sea and sun. Nuns pull out the clouds and name them. You weave what words are secret to most, to each other and to the stones. We are all very, very close. You'll recognize Etel's line there. Voyage. Flitting white ibis birds, dusk, the sacred naked blur of green bush. A dozen dotted in one cluster form a circle and set out of the inward ear, the call to prayer. A pulse, hushed worlds underground, anonymous plastic cluster. The soul wraps around Huda's stuffed grape leaves, still warm. The body is hungry, primal, clicking, procession of train cars stuck together like ants. Reflected sun, scattered palms stretch. War. Kaltum floats in the fierce shadowed garden. Hinein sculpts the bronze bosom of Egypt. Arab hearts with nothing have resonated in this alloy. Her dress in forever fall under the emerald canopy. Triangular earrings drop along the curve. all wrapped in the soul that sings to the army of peace. You write, Etel, she was the unity we had. Your memory and ours, woven with war, into the new century's thread. Etel Adnan, what you are to us now. The way you paint in Arabic, you write in water, you marry sun and sea, you play accordion books of the dispossessed. You walk in a forever Beirut that never can be, that is no longer. The war laid its flowers under tombs. You are the river that pulses through our veins. Paris, January 30th, 2025. Dear Etel, one of our poet friends is checking himself into a psychiatric hospital for panic. I think of Virginia Woolf's On Being Ill and of the importance of looking at the sky, taking a break from the armies of the upright. Paris is incredibly gray. It always was in the winter, but apparently it is more. I'm in the Acolytes Cafe across from Safa Fatih's apartment. I'm wearing a bright pink hat and matching scarf. I am here to go to Egypt with Safa. Cairo, February 1st, 2025. Dear Etel, I'm finally in Egypt. Safa was very insistent that I get a window seat on the plane from Paris so that I could see Cairo at night. There was no window seat to be had, but what I did see was a stretched out city, one of the biggest in the world, 24 million, with bands of red light and white light, the famous traffic of Cairo, curling through the dark from all the cars braking at a standstill. What I did surmise from learning that Safa has 11 nieces and nephews, and from the police escort that met us, who is one of 7 brothers and 1 sister, is that the traffic problem is coming from everyone having so many siblings. Cairo, February 2nd, 2025. Dear Etel, there were birds perched in the rising stones, an Egyptian raven, and pigeons flying across. I am not rereading Voyage, War, Exile, your piece which I taught at Naropa in June, as I recall how hard it is. El Minya, February 5th, 2025. Dear Etel, we walked by the Nile from the hotel rooms, and there was a small boat and a fisherman gathering the nets. A raven flew overhead. Safa heard the deep bubbling call of a bird and exclaimed her pleasure at the bird, and also that she came to Minya because I am here for the first time since her mother passed in 2012. Last night, her brother Mustafa, a retired general, drove us past where they used to hang out as teenagers and dance. And we saw as well her secondary school. Safa's energy is very sweet and reminds me of your childlike joy, dear Etel. El Minya, February 6, 2025. Dear Etel, entering the tomb of Parasisis from 300 BC, you would have loved, Etel, the inscriptions and engraving, the first layer in Greek with Greek figures, the second and third in hieroglyphics with Egyptian figures, baboons in squares, 9 of them, a sycamore tree with little blue leaves and an Egyptian goddess alive within. One boy pulling a calf's legs as it's being born, a difficult birth, wheat being grown. With Safa, I also visited the tomb of Isidora, her 17-year-old body mummified after she dreamed, her father not approving her love, and then after lamenting her loss deeply. I saw her feet and gasped and said, "Oh my God." Safa asked me if it would hurt me if she could take a picture, and I said to go ahead, but turned away as if she was about to throw a stone. The subject of a man lamenting her loss, sitting in that tomb day after day for years, in a film Safa wanted us to watch on the train to Minya, except that I was watching the cinema out the window. February 9th, 2025. Dear Etel, I am on the plane from Cairo to Paris. I watched a film in Arabic with English subtitles called Socrates and Nabila, based on a soccer player who died in 2011. Did he invent a genetically modified way of making cannabis? I am trying to understand the Arabic. The desire is there. I hear bits of words and phrases in English with an accent. Coffee break, enough is enough. 21 years after falling in love with Morocco, I fell in love with Egypt this week. Perhaps it takes the loving welcome and protection of a person, in this case Safa Fati, and a family and a people, its artists, and in this case its police force too. The racist fear of the Arab cultures is that they are not like the West. It's true that there are differences. Some of these differences are beautiful. The guava fruits are fresh, taste like pear and apple and kiwi combined. Some of the potato chips are tomato flavored. But what matters most is the similarities, the beauty of the families, that people are mothers and fathers, daughters and sisters, sons and brothers, that they are friends. The weave of the traffic in Cairo is intricate. A mother on a motorbike with a young girl and baby wrapped in her hands, riding behind the father on a scooter, moving this way and that, cars changing positions without lanes, pedestrians crossing through the vehicles, hundreds of myriad little decisions being made in concert. The idiocy of the American president, what he says on a daily basis, reaches me through the Egyptians and Moroccans. I have made a decision not to be defeated by his toxicity, not to be infected with it. Call it feminine energy, if you will. I draw my strength from the goddess at the tomb of Parasisis, 300 BC, and from her lower legs merged with the trunk of the sycamore tree. I ally with nature, polluted as it is, with human extravagance. I ally with the trees, the sycamore, the smoothness of its bark, the way its limbs curve and reach for the sun, the way in your paintings you make suns, like you knew in growing up to be a woman writer in Beirut. The sun, you said, was like something real coming through the windows. It had existence. I know this word shams in Egyptian Arabic. It is in Moroccan too. I cannot help but feel there is love in the afterlife. You say sometimes you have cherished your exile. You, Etel, made the most of life and inspire me to do the same. The openness to fall in love with California as you did, as I have too, to embrace the open sky above the skating rink in Prospect Park in a photo of our girls. It is this openness, childlike as it is, that is the greatest resistance we have to hate, revenge, war, misunderstanding. You said we are lifting off the earth. I see what you are saying, and sometimes I cry with all my limbs shaking, but I am in the sycamore tree. It is the place where I live, and I will not lift off. I am rooted here with Omar and the girls, my parents, Omar's mother, all of whom you met and loved. There are tears streaming down my face as I write to you, dear Etel. It is so incredible to be alive at this time. I am on a plane in brief exile from my country, the one I love for its trees, its sycamores and maples, its ash, its squirrels, its openness, even in its deep plunder, founding racism. And all its music, its personalities, its laughter. The US is a place of contradictions, a utopia founded on evil and theft and massacre. And yet you loved it. I love it too. I felt it in my body. My whole body and mind was shaken in 2019 when I really realized that we are destroying the earth. How can it be turned back? How can we reconstitute glaciers? We cannot. There is no technology that can stop what we have set in motion. And yet we gather. We continue to want babies, to publish books. Each colloquium seems more pressing than the next. The urgency enters our bodies. We react in small ways, sending diapers to Gaza, to mothers in LA. There is a kind of frenzy around how small the poetry project and Giorno poetry systems are compared to the need to hear you, Etel, to celebrate 100 years of you. How many people turned away? The Egyptian poet Sarah El-Kamel said to me the other day she did not know how she could survive without your book in the heart of another country. The word she used was survive. Would I be surviving without knowing you, Etel? Surely, yes, but differently. I was already a poet and a painter when I met you, not yet a filmmaker. You loved my film 6 Lives. I was already translating. All the seeds I planted in my challenging 20s were beginning to grow. Yet you gifted to yourself, to others, through your childlike joy, your strong embrace of what people need, your love of Arabs as your people, of horizons, of the sea and the sun, their cosmic marriage, the vastness of a yellow and pink and blue scene held together by a small red square. The tremendous presence of a mountain, Mount Tamalpais, and the little window from which you viewed it at your and Simone's home in Sausalito. I taught a whole semester of your work at Pratt to the creative writing students. Your life did not leave a hole when you passed. It felt like it, but it has been rainbow, rainbow, rainbow. Now I have been to Delphi as you asked me to do before you passed, and I have been to the Weaving Center near the pyramids. What more is there to do now, dear Etel? Where to go from here? I think if you were here, we would go and get a beer, and you would order escargot, or kibe and mamou. I think we would be painting and writing and falling in love with young women in love with us. I think we would go to the cafe. We would save the world. Love always, inshallah. Sarah.
So we'll read just a few poems from Time, and in particular, the section of it called October 27th, 2003. And I will read the original French. Sarah will read her English translations. And then, because Simone said earlier this afternoon that the translations of Etel's poems into Arabic always sound like language returned to its place. I will also read, after Sarah reads the English, the Arabic translations of those same poems by Khalid Najjar, a Tunisian poet who was a dear friend of Etel and Simone's, and who published bilingual editions of these texts, and in this case, quadrilingual edition. I would have, oh no, that's the English. There are 4 languages here. J'aurais voulu aller au café du coin, regarder le froid défiler tandis que je suis au chaud, ou même faire l'amour. Mais il pleut des bombes sur Bagdad. Ce soir, mes amis, je vais me coucher tôt, car l'obscurité s'est trop épaissie. Je vais essayer de ne pas, comme d'habitude, dans le rêve, me laisser emporter par des inondations, ni ne pas retrouver ma clé. Je vais tenter de dormir comme le font, je crois, les enfants. Il y a une période en automne où les arbres changent de nature et se réveillent dans un au-delà de la matière, puis on les voit revenir à leur être ordinaire. C'est bien de se tenir dans le discontinu, là où vivent les oiseaux, et savoir que les nations se nourrissent de rapines. Armés de cette désillusion, nous parvenons à supporter l'insoutenable. Elle conduisait sa voiture dans les méandres des interdits, et les soleils qui s'y cachaient lui donnaient une beauté elle-même proscrite. Je reviens à la Grèce avec l'acharnement d'un condamné à mort, sachant qu'elle n'est plus un territoire. Je devrais la construire à nouveau, mais au lieu d'acquérir des outils, je me disperse dans la douleur. Ne quittez pas la Méditerranée. Ailleurs, en toute saison, il n'y a que des pièges, et les regrets que vous allez dissimuler vous étrangleront. Ne quittez pas votre enfance et ses chagrins. Le premier désir vous accompagnera jusqu'au dernier souffle. Les routes mènent à des illuminations, mais jamais à la paix du cœur. Regardez à la télévision vos frères mourir et ne bougez pas. Ils sont dans un monde nouveau, bien que sans issue.
I'd have liked to go to the corner cafe, to watch the cold file by while I'm in the warm, or even to make love. But bombs are raining down on Baghdad. This evening, my friends, I'm going to bed early because the dark is too thick. I'll try, contrary to what's usual in dreams, not to let myself be carried by waves, nor hunt for my key. I'm going to try to sleep, I believe, as children do. There's a time in autumn when the trees change their nature and wake up beyond matter. Then one sees them come back to their ordinary selves. It's good to stay in discontinuity, there where birds live, and to know that nations feed themselves on plundering. Armed with this disappointment, we manage to bear the unbearable. She used to drive her car on forbidden ground, and the sun's hiding there gave her a beauty itself prescribed. I come back to Greece with the fierceness of one condemned to death, knowing that it's no longer a territory. I should build it up again, but instead of getting tools, I dissipate in grief. Don't leave the Mediterranean. Elsewhere, in all seasons. There are nothing but snares, and the regrets you will conceal will strangle you. Don't leave your childhood and its sorrows. The first desire will accompany you to the last breath. Streets lead to illuminations, but never to peace of the heart. Watch your brothers die on TV and don't move. They are in a new world, although with no exit. Paris, October 27, 2003.
كنت أستطيع أن أذهب إلى المقهى المجاور أتأمل البرد وهو ينسل في الخارج فيما أتنعم بالدفء أو حتى بممارسة الحب بيد أن القنابل كانت تنهمر على بغداد. يا أصدقائي، سأنام مبكرا هذا المساء لأن الظلمة تكاثفت كثيرا، وسأحاول ألا تجرفني الفيضانات كما اعتدت أن أراني في الأحلام، وسأحاول ألا أضيع المفتاح وأنا أنام مثلما ينام الأطفال كما أظن. هناك وقت في الخريف تغير فيه الأشجار طبيعتها وتستيقظ فيما وراء المادة، ثم نراها ترتد إلى حالتها العادية. جميل أن نظل في مساحة لا متواصلة، هناك حيث تعيش العصافير، وأن نعلم أن الأمم تتغذى من النهب. مسلحون بخيبتنا نتمكن من احتمال ما لا يطاق. كانت تقود سيارتها في المنعطفات المحظورة، وكانت الشموس التي تختبئ داخلها تمنحها جمالا هو نفسه محظور. سأعود إلى اليونان بعناد المحكومين بالإعدام، وأنا أدرك أنها لم تعد إقليما وعلي إعادة بنائها، ولكن وعوض اقتناء أدوات أراني أتبعثر في الألم. لا تغادروا البحر المتوسط، ففي أماكن أخرى وفي كل الفصول ليس ثمة سوى فخاخ، وحسراتكم المكتومة ستخنقكم. لا تهجر طفولتك وأحزانها، فإن الرغبة الأولى سترافقك حتى النفس الأخير. الطرقات تقود إلى إشراقات بيد أنها لن تمنحنا طمأنينة القلب. انظروا عبر التلفزيون إلى إخوانكم يموتون. لا تحركوا ساكنا، هم الآن في عالم آخر جديد بلا منفذ. It's me again. I'm pleased to introduce George Abraham. George is a Palestinian-American poet, essayist, critic, performance artist, and currently a writer-in-residence at Amherst College, where they teach. Apologies. They are the author of When the Arab Apocalypse Comes to America, forthcoming next year, and I think we will hear part of it or a version of it tonight, and previously of Birthright in 2020. George Abraham they're the is this still true? The executive director of Mizna?
Editor at large.
Editor at large of Mizna, and co-editor of the much awaited and currently in the process of multiple copy editings, Heaven Looks Like Us, Palestinian Poetry, an anthology that's coming out with Haymarket Books this year. Welcome, George. Will you do your clicker? Yeah, it's on. So.
Awesome, amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, while this gets set up, thank you so much. We have the galleys for Heaven Looks Like Us, which is crazy too. Yeah, I spent 10 hours yesterday proofreading this 360-page anthology. It was, so forgive my tiredness. While this comes on, I just want to begin by thanking you, Omar and Simone, for this beautiful, beautiful, abundant gathering. I feel like this is one of the most important readings I've ever been invited to do in my life, and I don't say that lightly. I truly believe that Etel is in the room with us right now, and so before going into my poems, as the projector warms up, I'm going to start with an excerpt from a letter that I wrote to Etel Adnan this past year, written on the 27th of September, 2024, during an escalatory invasion of Lebanon by the Zionist entity. So, Habibti Etel, I'm writing to reach you from beneath the rubble this empire has made of us and our words. The time for words has long passed. The time for words being long past has long passed. Months ago, when the Zionist entity's genocide in Gaza had escalated to lengths articulable in death counts, lists of names miles long, deaths cohering into, though difficult, though costing entire livelihoods, images, a witnessable catastrophe. Evaporated, that's the word used by a doctor in Beirut today to describe the fact that the Zionist entity's bombings left no traces, just evaporated bodies. I'm witnessing and will continue to witness the whole world's non-response. What they have done to us in words, they have been allowed to do to us in our bodies. Palestinian British poet Mira Matar said it best, I'll do to language what they did to my people. I'll blow it apart and make it run. It is here I turned to you. How your writing during the phase of the Nakba we'd come to know as the Lebanese Civil War resonates in all of us still to this day. To you, I am returning daily to get through this, perhaps in search of language that might render us all more capable of surviving. I'm writing to you from the Mizna office in the middle of our 18th Twin Cities Arab Film Festival, grateful to be surrounded by kin in a time like this. We are reminded of how cheap our bodies are, how worthless Arab lives are to the West, our executive director, Lana Barkawi, keeps on saying, as we hold conversation after tear-filled conversation throughout the festival. You've been here before, haven't you? I cannot think of your body of work without seeing all you've done for Arab Americans, especially with your beloved Rawi, Radius of Arab American Writers, who I volunteer for. Our latest issue of Mizna, up here, includes 2 poems by Palestinian-American poet Samar Farah, both addressed as letters to you, one of which speaks from her position as a fellow Rawi board member, telling you about our work, hoping we're carrying the torch she gifted us as we pass our organization's 30th anniversary together in mourning right after October 7th, 2023. I wish I could have written letters to you while you were still living. I wish I could have talked to you about form and legibility and the opposite of form and the opposite of legibility. Yeah, Etel, I want nothing more than to be illegible in the midst of this catastrophe to the minions of this evil country. I've given up on the politics of representation within any empire. It wasn't until rereading the Arab apocalypse amidst this current genocidal escalation that I felt like I could truly understand it, or rather, could see myself in its illegibility. Every day, for the first 59 days of this, was a new section. The 21st day of escalated genocide was spent mourning the silence of sellout Arab governments. As I read, the sun unites the Arabs against the Arabs. The sun married its mother to better crucify its son. The 22nd day of escalated genocide was spent wavering between, quote, prophet of a useless nation in my poetry and conducting university administrative duties per the sun's distribution of, quote, hours into bureaucratic drawers. And then day 59 came. And then there was night, but not an ending. No knowledge, no love, but peace. There was the terror of peace, as illiterate university professors around me wanted to go back to the peaceful classroom, discussing colonialism from an abstracted distance of pastness while being incapable of recognizing it in the present. None of them could look me in the eye after October 7th, and I think it's better that way. They are not ready to see me because they're not ready to see the monstrosity of their own selves. What has become of this word ceasefire? How could that which was once a bare minimal demand a year ago still, to this day, remain our central insistence? History has rendered that word meaningless. America is the death of all meaning. I spent a lot of my time completing When the Arab Apocalypse Comes to America, thinking about this utter disillusion of meaning. Running vertically down the right margins of the poem, I've placed a single, never-ending line of protest poetry. Over the course of this line, the chant "ceasefire now" repeats, dissolves into glyphs, riffing on your own from the Arab Apocalypse and inventing my own. Maybe what I'm trying to say is thank you for giving me forms beyond articulability, for giving me language beyond legibility. Forgive me. I once wanted to write scholarship about you. I once believed in infecting their generic norms from the inside. I believe now that your work requires a different form of study. It requires a different kind of catastrophe. In truth, this project began over a year before October 7th. In another moment of illegibility, witnessing Arab Americans in Dearborn gathered in protest advocating for the banning of queer books in November 2022. Visiting this beloved city that fall, a city I've only known through queer Arab kinship, it became so apparent to me that some of us are living in a different world, a total other regime of illegibility. Returning to this beginning years later, I cannot help but feel haunted by it, witnessing this moment in queer and transphobic legislation on one hand, and on the other hand, noting that among the most elite organizations fighting against book bans, PEN America has utterly failed Palestinians at every single level. They who cannot even say the word genocide, who care more about us when we're slaughtered than when we're living, who piss on our graves in their daily normalization with the Zionist entity, illiterates like Paisley Rechdel, a poet I once respected, defend PEN America, caring more about Palestinian books on fire than Palestinian bodies on fire. Even the former epigraph opening this very movement of the poem was once from Saeed Jones, yet another writer I once respected who has fallen to the Poets for Harris brand of neoliberal illiteracy that paves over our corpses. I want to return to the beginning of this poem in all its haunting motions. May this haunt be generative. In the words of Ahlam Moladina that close out our most recent Mizna issue, may the haunt be an open wound, with love, with all it requires of us. one, fall. A red sun, a reddened sun, a red beginning and ending sun, a red reddening into a sun, a red beyond the red Americans call sun a pink sun. A dearborn midnight sun, unreflecting a pink sun, a sun washed pink, a sun bleached of its flesh, a disco sun. A glaring shatter beneath every pink is a red, craving its own flesh, a pink, fleshy sun. A red, bleached sun, a black hole craving a fleshless sun, a quivering sun, a spaghettified sun, the fragile tubes of mourning, a sun refusing to pair with itself, a rancid sun, an intifada of homosexuals, a bleach guzzling sun, a crowd of holes guzzling bleach, an Arab dawn, a holy obad, an Arab dawn chanting, stop, a book with a hole in it, stop, a book with a sun at its stop, a crowd with a hole in its heart, a crowd chanting the sun, holy, an Arab mass, a shattering collective, a queer night, a sun craving the night's whole, the sun saying, I'm just a whole daddy sun, sun craving its own fall, its own red, a sun suboptimal red, a red redder than the red of stop, a daddies of sons, a murder of fathers, a bleaching of crows, a turtle love is love, a laughing sun, a guffawed hole, a nostril sun, Jesus with a hole in his hand, heart hole, Jesus snorted sun, son who bears a cross of coke, stop, salvation of submissive sun, a crest whitening sun strip, a teeth-lined hole rimming, stop, a crestfallen sun, a disco sadness. I held the sun in my hands like a flagpole. Daddy, I wished my hands of the sun. I washed my hands of the sun. Daddy, in all the water runs. Pink every wingspan is, and elsewhere resisting formlessness. Sanity in the rubble, sanity a cleft, trouble, sanity and frequency, sanity, insanity, insanity into perfect holes. Such suns are stop. A European extraction of sun. Solar Rorschach, paint me like one of your French, slide into my DMs with stop, disidentification of stop, image received, click to stop, whistle where once notifications once, stop, collective in attention, stop, what to make of the need to be seen, the need to be stop, whereas what is my life, whereas stop, the American who wants to translate without knowing Arabic, stop, the Arab who wants to be translator without knowing Arabic, full stop, I lie liminal in language, I lie myself into translation, where once was Arab American, where conflict untranslates, occupations doubled, center, lamb, a son who wants to double itself, a tongue lust, 13 ways of looking at a Palestinian, 13 ways of translating Palestinian, and all of them end in blood. Commandment, Ra, I look to God and find body on fire, Ra, the solar trigger at the center of my Ra to culture, water, Ra, what sacred must boil, must run, where running has weight, and what waits is untouchable, where I am, untouchable, where I am, untouchable, where I am, untouch you, who taught me how to paint in Arabic, to witness in English, to taint the English with spectral witnessing. The catastrophe of lovelessness, is it catastrophe I lack? Can't a girl just spiral in pieces? The lyric I, who wants to summon its ancestors, can only summon Americans chanting, ban them, amidst Arabs chanting, ban them, amidst the banned Arabs joining the crowd, amidst Americans pissing themselves into solar uncontext. The Arab who wants to be poet laureate saying, pant me like one of your sand, qasida the epic, ghazal me loveless, sonnet me into transnational, hold the eye, dot the teehee. The catastrophe of love was a catastrophe of land. Lessness was a catastrophe of love. Lessness was a catastrophe of land, a catastrophe of love, a catastrophe of... You think you're acting independently, but you've actually been manipulated, but you've actually been manipulated, but you've actually been manipulated, but you've actually been... Movement 3, winter. We're skipping a year for the victims of the Nakba that's never ended, for the martyrs of Gaza from 2023 to 2024 to 2025 too. And we burned the rules of syntax We burned the chains of grammar and converted to the struggle. Rashid Hussain, Lessons in Parsing. Genocide remains, if anything, a kind of syntax. Causality is particle. Ontology is parsing. Expert is archaeology. President is transitive. Baby is object. Palestine is subject to. Murder is chiasmus. New York Times is illiteracy. Limbs are punctuation. Arms are comma. Bullet is maf'ul al-mutlaq. Hospital is conditional. Campus is tense. Stone thrown is maf'ul li-ajlah. Phosphorus is accusative. Night is iamb. Dawn is maf'ul fihi. God is contrapuntal. Crucifixion is clarity. Care is idafa. Eve is genitive. River is sea. Against the relentless laughter of evil, there's less and less living room. And where are my loved ones? June Jordan. Not merely a murder, but an extraction of life in its bare essence. That the border between death and, well, whatever one can bear to name this, was a single banana. And what to say of the flesh? Where is it gone? The sun withered in the cheeks, heavy in the eyes, and lightness was a living death that blooms into a future of real estate, of techno-capitalist rot. And where are our loved ones? Oh, Jordan, how to room living in this reduction, distillate? I search for words and find only chemical. Name horizon our disabled youth who cannot touch the sea as they touch and become sky. Debilitized we, incapacitated we. Oh, the metaphors they've made of Palestine's real. Oh, the flowerings. Amidst the smell of corpses forgotten by the garbage collector sleeps the sun, while perspire the plants. Etel Adnan. While sweat the grasses, while sunspot the tonsils, while manicure the claws, while stench the bed rot, while biscuit the blinded felines, while tense the jaws, while sterile the pits, while tooth the witnesses, while shriek winter the crows, while murder the poems, while Palestine's the moon, while weather's the news, while riot shield the pigs, while billboard the fascists, while human the shields, while tubercular the time, while living the citizens, while invertebrate the experts, while fall the stocks, while abyss the echo, while wounds the history, while histories the wound, while work, while tether, while freeze the commit, while unwall the bulldoze, while crown the crown, while missile the endowments, while limb the roadways, while hush money's the Gulf, while severs Bolivia, while raptures the Christians, while fractures the nation, while pisses solar the board, while imbalance the checks, while vomits the regime of the sun, while shrapnel, while nights Palestine, while rivers the sea, while dawn. I grant you refuge, and knowing that the dust will clear, and they who fall in love and died together will one day laugh. Haba Abu Nada, Alirhamha. The sun can no longer look us in the eye, refuses the image of a shriveled corpse, of a corpse starved before it was dismembered, of a corpse tangled into a net, dropped into the sea, called aid, of a corpse unimageable beneath the rubble, of a corpse that became rubble, of a hollowed out people returning to the sea in thirst, in refusal. The sun becomes the image of everywhere, a red sun staining a bag of flour, a hemorrhage in the shape of a green sun, an abscess, a wound from the eye of the wound of a yellowed sun, a blue-beaten sun, a kingdom of jaundice. In the body's silence waits the sun of stop. I looked the sun in the eyes for 6 months, unwavering stop. In the opposite of nature, I found a wilderness of stop. Is green the color of silence, or is green the color of a kind of apocalypse? I am become Gaza, said the sun, refusing still to look any of us in the eye. Why must every Palestinian story be a family story? Isabella Hamad and her ghost. By one blood, my family is well fed. By another, my family cries salt. By choice, my family takes to the streets on fire. By another, dissolving still, we do not glance back. I tire of shoulder-gripped questions of family, of prayer and proximity in this singular grief. By one measure, my closest relatives are rotting in an American jail cell. By another, they are men I've never met, carving cross after olive-wooded cross in the land that birthed a God we could only know as cousin. Were we cousined then in grief, like water to wine or fish to loaf? We thirsted for miracles. We're given only this body of, if I must die, let it bring hope. Let it be a tale. And on the day of the so-called ceasefire, when they kidnapped the Gazan poet, where were you? Or had you already crowned him into martyr? You who only know how to love an artist by mummifying them. When the Arabs love our poets, we turn them into music. When the Arab apocalypse comes to America, its music will be one of phone calls across borders, wondering if this is how our ancestors felt the day they stole Kanafani from us. I cry every time I see a kite with Refat's words, that poetry can become a study in better names than monument. How much of us has died in the assumption that greatness, the sun a poem arcs towards. A line ending can be a kind of illiteracy. If it can happen in language, it can happen in the body. If it can happen in myth, it was already a kind of history. We tell this to ourselves as we mourn a man we've known through poems, screens, impossible distance. That exile is just a state of loving the ones we haven't met, as we live the lives we could never live, while grieving those very same lives. Oh, why am I on earth with these people? Dion Brand. Poets of this useless nation, where were you? Have you whatever darwish you found digestible today? Can you love us beyond our capacity to translate? What's the view from your yacht, from RC? How coppered are the canyons of Made in the USA? How does it feel to taste the ash of Darwish's corpse on your charred dinner plates? Get my pretty name out of your fucking mouth, I sang to the illiterates of pen. Is it you who pledge allegiance to a flag sown of our children's corpses? When has the Atlantic been anything but a war crime? Have we named the weeds that water themselves in our blood, money, while budding the millions extracted from indigenous writers, or the poet laureate saying, hello, my name is U.S. government? We're waiting for Joy Harjo to apologize to all of us, as if we haven't witnessed the CIA's ghosts buying out literary conference booth blocks like real estate. The apocalypse of Palestine is an apocalypse of letters, I promise. I'm still not over the University of the Chicago Press charging us hundreds for permission to republish their one abandoned Palestinian, call it a hostage narrative. When the nice white lady rejected me, she spelled out sigh, no metaphor. When every day is wound day. Academy of American Silences. Can we pluck these weeds like stubborn hairs? Has the wolf pack gone silent? Shall I condemn myself a little for you to forgive yourself? Fadi Juta. I condemn the blooded river that became a sea we cannot crawl out of. I condemn bulldozers that, as if silkworms, shoveled our corpses. I condemn the caterpillar of gears, the puma of sweatshops, the hijacking of stars and bucks, and never the fall of entities from such withholdings. I condemn the poets that slur activists, the poetry identifying as activism, as if any artist of empire knew what it meant to shred fences, to hijack, to put one's own body on the line for their people. I condemn those who say our morals have come at the expense of our dreaming. I condemn that the pearly-gated hijacking of Jaffa in which I walked was once the dream of illiterate men. I condemn their entire imagination, the need to make of nature's lines and expanses a border, a less capacious dreaming. Terror has a name, and it is boundless. We, the world at stake is just more Palestine to free. I condemn the river. I condemn the sea. 4. Spring. Long live the student intifada that has never ended. Have you finally stopped shooting yourself, Salman Sharif? There's springtime. It will be winter, all winter, and spring, and summer. And we will still be waiting for another fall. My father died in autumn, a death so American it became a Palestinian death, and it was winter all year after. Can we imagine 40,000 years of winter, 400,000 years of winter, the rubble of it, a year for every unknowable death beneath the avalanche, all of them. Such Palestinian deaths, they became American deaths. On the opposite ends of oceans we are, but are not one in corpselessness. Empire wants us to think ourselves exceptional in grief, wants us to think we are unmournable in mass. Is there a door on the other side of winter, or is every season merely tunnel? Is the winter that became the winter that never ended? America deserves no redemption, no sunshine, only heat death from which we cannot wake. For all of our sakes, we'll stop this world, Ya Gaza. We'll stop this world, and red lines of protest resisting borders, red the body of stake for the body politic to come, red the animal grief to which we are reduced, red the stain of a maiming articulation, red the permissible name for slaughter, red the house to be built over the body to come, red the soil of Gaza refusing to give permission to, red the beheadings aftermath Rafah wasn't afforded, red the tint with which we see their every face, red the line undeadened, the redacted, read the hands of every executive board who read the illiteracy of every squint and bend and twist required to unsay the name of red, the river and the sea, Palestine and horizon of red, the country purged from every American, red, the world at stake beyond our reach. Can the tenured speak? Can the mouth? Can the peace? Can the president? Can the landlord? Can the shutter unsee? Can the code unloop? Can the if unsyntax? Can the absence reorient? Can the be we? Can the I? Can the sea pack be? Can the river uncommit? The time for words is already behind us. Long live the infantada, the sun said, of students carrying a list of slaughtered children the length of a whole nation. Who can bear this spring of us? The cameras stupefied into flowers, the sky heavy with inverted starlight. What happened in the dark happened to us in another imagination of light. of day, where the cop will crown himself soldier, the soldier will crown himself angel. In this empire of backfired falsettos, we tire of heaven, the need of it, the liar in lyric. They shot a kid in the face today, stop. The kid was American before he was stop. They made a red, they made a red, stop. Blood in the water, stop water in the blood of words, of offices. It's spring, and all the colors have grown, new meanings, a pink red, a red, a yellow who wants to be sunspot, a green, a Palestine ungreened of its reds. The sun was an op dressed in yellow, marshal of stop. I drank the sun and my body was all tunnel stop. The language of solo detention, language of spray painting, fuck the police is the only acceptable negotiation. Stop the poems. The poems have left our words in form, instead a tent. Find us there, where Palestine is everywhere.
Thank you, George. We don't have a lot of time for a break, but I'm letting a few seconds go by as we move to the next section. I want to welcome Amir Safar to the stage. Amir is an Iraqi-American composer, trumpeter, santur player, and vocalist, working at the intersections of jazz, Western classical, and maqam music of Iraq and the Middle East. He's an expert jazz trumpeter with a classical background, and he's created techniques to play microtones and ornaments idiomatic to Arabic music that are not typically heard on the trumpet. He's also one of the few living performers of the centuries-old Iraqi maqam tradition, which he sings and plays on the santur, which he brought with him. He's created a unique microtonal language that merges the Arabic maqam modal system with jazz and Western harmony. There's a lot of formations that he plays and has played with, a lot of projects I could mention. I will just say, because it's important for those of us who live in New York, that last year, or a year and a half ago, he began a new initiative. It's called Maqam Studio. And Maqam Studio, which is a project but also a physical place in Brooklyn, has a mission of preserving and fostering the development of Iraqi maqam and related practices of music in Brooklyn, in Iraq, and in the Arab world. For tonight, Amir has worked on a piece especially based on texts by Etel, in particular text excerpted from her book Night, which will be projected on screen and which he will sing, and also some poems from the Spring Flowers' Own, as translated into Arabic by Iraqi poet May Muzaffar. Thank you, Amir.
Standing trees sleep in this forest that created the night. Standing trees sleep in this forest that created the night when the moon was looking elsewhere. Gone the sailboats, gone the sailboats, the sea. Gone the sailboats, gone the sailboats, the sea. In this obscurity that's keeping no promise, shadows strangely resemble yesterday's trees, yesterday's and tomorrow's being the walls of our prison. Prisons. Those shadows have landed us. Those shadows have landed us into taxis and houses, telling the light to stay outside. But the moon was right not to bother. darkness foreign to it. Night is an exhalation rising from a darkness foreign to it. Along eclipse. In its will to protect the living from the maddening effect of a constant presence. Nature created memory and escape arrest. memory in time. Both immaterial both in material are rivers with no banks and constantly merging. We are. Are rivers with no banks and constantly merging. We are, and memory, a sanctuary of infinite spacious. memory. And night and memory mediate each other. And night and memory mediate each other. And night and memory mediate each other. We move in them disoriented, for they often refuse to secure our vision. Avaricious, whimsical, they release things bit by bit. Light is blinding. Light is blinding. Is the enemy. Desiring desire. That's when a body disintegrates and contaminates every brain. makes and contaminates every river it has ever known. Is a subtle ray wetting body and soul. Night is a subtle ray wetting body and soul. A passenger is boarding a ship. Let's live before dying. There is so much life around me. This morning there was light. Tomorrow there will be light. This morning there was light. Tomorrow there will be but when is love. Truly a pleasure to premiere this new work for all of you. My first time performing it, start to finish, so you witness to the birth of something. I did have a translation of Etel's poetry into Arabic that I dutifully obtained from the translator, Main Mudaffar, but I understand that we are way over time, so I don't believe that it's going to happen today unless I hear otherwise. But stay tuned, this piece is in progress, and there'll be more performances in the near future.